Okay. 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 Very good evening, ladies and gentlemen, principals of Lakhimpur Girls College and Disney College, my colleagues and participants from all over India. First of all, I, Kalidas Brahma, on behalf of the organizing committee, wish you a very, very happy International Women's Day. I, on behalf of the organizing committee, welcome you all in this webinar on portrayal of women in the Mahabharata. Today we have with us a very special guest, renowned academician of contemporary time. Once upon a time, my colleague, Dr. Ravi Kangai from Nagpur University. I know many of you might be tired today because of different assignments you have got in connection with International Women's Day 2022. Therefore, without any delay, I want to proceed the program. As per our program, now I would like to request Dr. Subhanjali Prasad Das to give a very, very brief introduction of today's invited guest, Dr. Ravi Kangai. Dr. Subhanjali Prasad Das, over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Brahma sir. Am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. I'm Dr. Subhanjali Prasad Das, Assistant Professor, Department of Political Science, Lakhimpur Girls College. Sir, presently work as an Assistant Professor, Postgraduate Teaching, Department of History, Rashtrasan Tukadoji Maharaj, Nagpur University, Nagpur. Regarding Kangai sir's academic side, I'd like to mention that he is rated among top 0.5% scholars across the globe on academia.edu, source is June 2021. Sir got his postdoctoral fellowship from Indian Council of Historical Research in the year of 2012 and 13. Sir is also subject matter expert for Tata Consultancy Services and Indian Council of Historical Research. His total number of publications of research papers is 72. Sir has his academic alliance with Indian Discovery Center, Boston, USA, and University of British Columbia, Canada. Another very interesting fact about Sir is, Sir served in the Indian Air Force for 15 years and awarded Operation Vijay Medal for participation in Kargil action in the year of 1999. We are very privileged to have you here, sir.
Okay,
Yeah,
Dr. Subhanjali Prasad, ma'am, for your introduction. Unfortunately, I was not audible in the beginning. Now I would like to request our principal, Dr. Surajit Bhuya, to speak few lines on the importance of today's program. Sir.
Thank you to Kalidas Brahma. Good evening to all of you. Respected speaker, Dr. Ravi Kangai, Dr. Brihasgiri Bosumutari, Principal, Disney College, and all the people present in this webinar. First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Kangai for giving his valuable time with us despite his busy schedule. I am thankful to Principal Disney College for collaborating with us. And I am also thankful to Dr. Kalidas and Dr. Kusum also. Every year on March 8th, International Women's Day is celebrated globally. It's a day when everyone shows appreciation, love, and respect towards women who work hard each day to accomplish individual and professional goals. For many people, the role of women is limited to household responsibilities only. Since ages, men have had more advantages in every sphere of life in comparison to women. This needs to change as we all are humans and should be treated equally with equal rights and opportunities. The world is moving towards gender equality, a much needed balance between both men and women. This change is required and essential as well. But it in professional life or personal life, celebrating women is a sense of obligation to each and every woman in one's life. Those brothers who understand that they are sisters, and those husbands who understand that their wives are free to do whatever they want and always stand in support of their decision, deserve applause also. We must accept that both women and men contribute equally to the betterment of the home and the society. Every woman is extraordinary. No matter where she works, be it a home or an office, they are making a huge difference to the world around her. And most importantly, they play a vital role in the upbringing of children and making a home. With her selfless love, a woman blesses two families and knows how to keep the relationship intact. The household responsibilities are believed to be a woman's only area of work. But the time society has seen many changes. Our responsibility is to honor and appreciate the women who are achieving success in their lives, thereby bringing success into the lives of other women and everyone around her. Moreover, society is better when women are given equal respect. Women should gather the courage to cross all the hurdles in all the spheres of life to make a tremendous improvement. We can see International Women's Day classes a greater significance, and as it is becoming a custom year after year. This celebration is a sign of appreciation, respect, love, and care towards women in our lives and in the society. This generation trusts and values women with great responsibility, and we are privileged to be part of it. To end with some lovely words, all I want to say is women are warriors, fighting without swords and conquering through love. And with these few words, I would like to conclude my speech. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for your beautiful words. Now, I would like to request Dr. Bihasgiri Basumatari, Principal of Disney College, to inaugurate the program. Sir, please.
Thank you, Brahma. Good evening. Namaskar, Kulumbai. Respected Principal Dr. Surajit Bhuya, Lakhimpur Girls College. Honorable appointed speaker, Dr. Ravi Khangai, Rastrasant Tokadoji Maharaj Nagpur University, faculty members of Lakhimpur Girls College, faculty members of Disney College, and to everyone present in today's national webinar. On behalf of Disney College family, I would like to welcome you all to the online one-day national webinar organized by IQAC Lakhimpur Girls College and Political Science Department of Lakhimpur Girls College in collaboration with Education Department of Business College. I am glad for the subject matter of the webinar, that is the portrayal of women in Mahabharata. I feel that it is very important and in fact necessary to dissect and challenge existing patriarchal preconceived notion with the ever-changing gender dynamics of the 21st century. This allows us to put in things into perspective. Exploring the past can be an integral factor to initiating change in the present. Women in the Mahabharata were all seen through the male gaze in a strict patriarchal setting, limiting their representation to being someone's wife, sister, or mother, and preventing their characters from being their own individual selves. I hope that this webinar initiates conversations and helps us understand and compare the past gender dynamic with the present. With this short speech, I conclude and hope for a successful webinar ahead. Thank you. Dhanyabad. Gajanten. Over to Kalidas Brahma.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for the short and very precious words. And now, without any delay, I would like to request my earliest colleague and presently working as assistant professor in Nagpur University, Dr. Ravi Kangai sir, to deliver a speech on portrayal of women in the Mahabharata. Sir, please.
Well, thank you, Brahma sir. I hope I am audible.
Yes, sir, very nicely.
Right. Mano buddhi ahankara chitta ninaham chidananda rupam shivoham shivoham. Most respected principal of Lakhimpur Girls College, Dr. Surjit Bhuyan, principal of Business College, Dr. Basu Maitri, my friend Dr. Kalidas Brahma, the professor who introduced me, Dr. Shubhanjali ma'am, other faculties of both the college, scholars and researchers joining from the different parts of the country, dear students of both the college, and dear friends from the vibrant Northeast. I extend my warm greeting on the occasion of the International Women's Day. Good evening from Maharashtra. And now, please permit me to go to my today's talk, that is Portrayal of Women in the Mahabharata.
Program.
Well, I hope PPT is also visible, Brahma sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Right. Okay. So the first important thing is that at this stage, why we should need to study and engage with the text that is almost 2,500 years old, approximately. The very important thing is that if you move across the length and breadth of the country, you will find hardly anyone who is not familiar with the Mahabharata. Somewhere or another, maybe a little bit of introduction. They have some concept about Mahabharata, their characters. At the same time, it is equally difficult to find a person who has read the complete Mahabharata. The sheer size of the Mahabharata in the critical edition of the Mahabharata prepared by Bhandarkar Oriental Research Institute, we have nearly 80,000 verses. And in the Worldgate Popular Edition that is published by Gita Press Gorakhpur, we have nearly 120,000 verses. And so this total size of the epic acts as one of the deterrent. Like it is considered, it is believed that it is 7 times larger than the 2 epic of the Europe, that is Iliad and Odyssey. If you combine them together, Mahabharata will be 7 times larger than both of them combined together. But nevertheless, as it is one of the normative texts, it creates an attitude, it creates a role model. Still, we refer to some elderly person, a respectable person as Bhishma Pitamaha, who is very accomplished person. We rarely find anybody naming their daughter as Draupadi, because Draupadi's polendry, it hurts somewhere our sense of moral values, that a woman can have 5 husbands. So, one way or another, somewhere in our subconscious mind, Mahabharata and the characters from the Mahabharata, they continue to exist. And that is the reason we need to engage with the Mahabharata, because it has become a kind of timeless text. The situation might change. History is having a different dimensions. And one of the dimension is that it changes with the time, and there is a one more dimension that is called eternal relevance. So human emotion like anger, frustration, love, hatred, these emotions, they still condition and affect our behavior, and they may continue to do it in future as well. And we find in the pages of the Mahabharata portrayal of all the conceivable emotions. There is a hatred, there is a love, there is a sacrifice, and that is the reason we need to engage with Mahabharata. And today's talk is obviously how the women are generally pursued in the Mahabharata. Let me have a little bit of introduction about the text. The expert by philological study, they generally believe that the Mahabharata has acquired a written form from somewhere around 400 BC to 400 AD. But before that, the stories that has found place in the Mahabharata, as well as the central theme of the fratricidal war between the cousin, was in oral circulation. And as it happens with the stories in the oral circulation, it undergoes a lot of changes, and it has happened with the text as well. Mahabharata earlier, most of us know that it was called Jaya, having only 8,800 verses. Then it was enlarged to Bharata with 24,000 verses. So a lot of stories were added to it. And then later on, it was enlarged to Mahabharata with nearly 1 lakh verses. And this text, which had undergone a lot of changes over a period of time, contributed by many, though traditionally we believe that it is Vyasa who wrote the Mahabharata, but the expert definitely believe that it is not a work of one person, for the simple reason that it have a lot of heterogeneity. The message that come to us about any issue, any concern about human life, let it be an attitude towards woman, is not a homogeneous message. It have a lot of heterogeneity, lot of variation. And we find that there is a didactic portion where it seems that the author or the contributor of the Mahabharata has deliberately tried to dictate what is to be done and what is not to be done, how to lead a good life. But there is a narrative portion also, which seems to have grown very naturally. And this didactic and narrative portion, they got mixed up. Now, how we treat it as a source of history, as Romila Thapar calls this Itihasa Purana tradition as an embedded history. History is embedded into it. And the Russian linguistic Bakhtin call it that in the literature, we find something called chronotopicity. What does that mean is that the social norms, the aspiration of the society, the values of the society are reflected and personified in the characters in the Mahabharata. We are not going to engage here whether Draupadi was a woman of flesh and blood, but through the portrayal of Draupadi, what message the Mahabharata is trying to give to us, or what kind of values are being reflected in the Mahabharata, that we will be trying to understand. And in order to understand the portrayal of woman or the perception of women in the Mahabharata, we have these different issues. Like there is a concept of our woman and other woman. Our woman means the women who are coming from the mainstream Sanskritic Brahmanical society, which occupies the central stage, which occupies the main writing space in the Mahabharata. And there are other women who are coming from the peripheral territory, peripheral society like Hidimba and Ulupi. They are portrayed in a different manner that we will be discussing. Human, we are very selfish people. We know how to use our logic to justify our selfish desire. So the Mahabharata, the writer of the Mahabharata had tried to justify why the women need to be controlled. And then there is a typical psychological condition called Stockholm Syndrome. We'll be discussing Stockholm Syndrome. There is a myth about surrounding the virginity of women. There is a myth around the birth of Drona and Kripa, Draupadi's character. There was a system of Niyoga. Amba's revolt. Let us see how much we can cover, because women, portrayal of the woman in the Mahabharata, we can do a very extensive research on it, but whatever is possible within the time of 45 minutes that Brahma sir has given me, I'll try to touch upon as much as possible. Well, now the first topic that I am taking is that is our woman versus other woman. Now Kunti, Gandhari and Draupadi, these are the women who are coming from the mainstream Sanskritic Brahmanical society, as this society seems to be occupying the main writing space in the Mahabharata. And the women like Hidimba and Ulupi, they seems to be coming from the territorial society. On the periphery, this society exists. So we have at least two kind of societies here. One is the society of plain people, the Brahmanical Sanskritic society, and there are tribal society with whom this society come into contact. Now, the perception of the writer of the Mahabharata with regard to these two type of women, two categories of women are quite different. Kunti, Gandhari, and Draupadi, they lead a life which is sexually very subdued. They never assert themselves, their desire. They are never open about their desire. But in contrast, take the case of Hidimba. It is Hidimba who takes initiative in forming an alliance with Bhima. Ulupi takes an initiative in forming alliance with Arjuna. So what does this indicate? Does it indicate that in comparison to the women coming from the Sanskritic Brahmanical society, these women are relatively free to assert their carnal desire and select their mate? That could be one hypothesis. Second hypothesis is that probably this is how these women from the periphery are pursued from the mainstream upper caste male, because these Sanskrit texts are generally, by and large, creation of the upper caste male, and they pursued the people in a different way. Just because a woman on the periphery dresses up in a different manner, that does not mean that she is a woman with the loose morality. But we find that this kind of portrayal in the Mahabharata, for example, Hidimba, she betrays her own brother because she is so infatuated with Bhima. Ulupi tells a lie that she is an unmarried girl because she is so infatuated with Arjuna. So, we find this typical portrayal that these women on the periphery are getting infatuated and attracted towards the mainstream heroes like Bhima and Arjuna, and they are being assertive about their sexuality, they are being assertive about their sexual desire. Also portrays the women from the mainstream society like Kunti in a better light. So, this is a one way that other women and our women are portrayed. Now, let us come to the children that is born to these women. Ghatotkacha was the firstborn of the Pandavas, but Bhima and other Pandavas, Kunti, they leave Hidimba immediately after the birth of Ghatotkacha, and there is no mention of Bhima taking any responsibility of his child. But Ghatotkacha is remembered only at the time of the war to be sent against Karna so that Arjuna is saved. And we have the narration, if we read about the war Parva, where this death of Ghatotkacha occurs, we find that Krishna is playing a very Machiavellian role. He says, he instigates Ghatotkacha that it is your responsibility as a son to serve the family of your father. But where was the family of father when Ghatotkacha was growing up? She was brought up alone by Hidimba, and even though he was the eldest, he was never given the glamour of being a prince. Never surrounds him. It surrounds Abhimanyu, the son of Arjuna, but he is being just used as a cannon fodder. And same is the case with Iravan, the son that is born from the union of Arjuna and Ulupi. He is also called and used in the war to fight for their father's family. Now here we find that there is an overlapping of gender and Varna. Women from the mainstream society have their own issues, like life of Draupadi and Kunti definitely was not a bed of roses. They had to undergo a lot of hardship. But when it comes with the women of the lower Varna or women who are outside the mainstream patriarchal or mainstream Sanskritic society, the discrimination seems to be overlapping. Their own Varna or their own lower position in the society as someone who is not from the upper caste, as well as their gender, it overlaps, and they are subjected to the double discrimination, like Hidimba is left and Ulupi is left after the childbirth. In the Shanti Parva, Bhishma tells to Yudhishthira that a Brahmin can have four wives. One is from his own caste, another is from Kshatriya, third one is from Vaishya, and fourth one is from Shudra. But their order of respectability starts with Brahmana woman, and the child born to the Brahmana woman, even if he is the youngest, he is to be treated as the eldest. And nothing should be given to the child that is born to the Shudra woman. So here we see the Varna and the gender being overlapped, and the woman born in the lower caste, as well as the woman born in the society that was outside the periphery or on the periphery of the Sanskritic society, are being subjected to the double discrimination. Varanasankara, the mixing of the Varnas, is considered as one of the most heinous and very frightening thing. Like Arjuna mentions it in the Bhagavad Gita, that if I fight, most of the Kshatriya men will be dying in the battlefield, and the women will be without protection, without control, and that may lead to the Varnasankara. Interestingly, Krishna later on in the Bhagavad Gita also says the similar thing. He says, if I don't act, the people will follow my example and they will also become inactive, leading to the Varnasankara. In case of the Varnasankara, there are two types, Anuloma and Pratiloma. In case of Anuloma Vivaha, Anuloma marriage or Anuloma alliance, the man is from the upper Varna and the woman is from the lower Varna. That is, all the Varnasankaras are being looked down upon, no doubt about it. But Anuloma Varnasankara is tolerated to a certain extent. But Pratiloma Varnasankara, in Pratiloma Varnasankara case, the man is from the lower Varna and the woman is from the upper Varna. And that kind of Varnasankara is considered to be one of the most heinous, which will lead to the whole family to the hell. And anybody indulging into that kind of Varnasankara is to be given a very stringent punishment, like that man is to be burned to death and woman to be expelled. So we have this kind of narrative, which were definitely indicative of the intention of maintaining the upper caste Brahminical hegemony over the society, as well as on women's bodies. Now let us go to the next important interesting fact. One of the important tool, that is textual tool, that is used in the patriarchal society as well as in the Mahabharata to control women, that is to make the women speak in favor of men. The narratives are given from the side of the men, but it is a woman who speak it. Like in case of, in a one parva, Krishna along with his wife Satyabhama, they visit the Pandavas, and Satyabhama and Draupadi have dialogue. Satyabhama interestingly asked Draupadi, do you have certain magic? How these 5 husbands of yours, they listen to you? And Draupadi narrates. And in the narration of Draupadi, Draupadi says, ki you need to treat your husband like a god, even if he is a drunkard. You are not supposed to talk with any man in privacy, not even your son. Don't eat anything that is not liked by your husband. Dress up. When your husband is coming home, give him water to wash his feet. Don't allow your dasi, your maid, to give it. So, the husband is to be treated as a god. It's spoken by a woman. There is a story of unknown housewife. The sage Kaushika was meditating in the forest, and there was a bird on the tree, and the bird dropping fell on his head. He just looked up angrily, and because of his gaze, the rishis, they had a magical power because of their pinness, because of their tapasharya. The bird is burned to ashes. Now, after some time, this sage Kaushika, Rishi Kaushika, he walks into the village so that he can get something to eat, and he encounters a woman. The woman is not, the name is not mentioned. And he says, okay, please give me something to eat. Woman goes inside, but she sees that her husband has came back from a long journey, and she forgets about the sage. She attends to him, give him water, give him food. And the sage is very angry about this. He bursts out. He says, how dare you to keep a Brahmin sage waiting? And the woman says, hold on, sir. I am not a bird to be burned by your anger. And the sage is surprised now. The sage says, how do you know about the bird? And the woman says, sir, I got all this spiritual power. I know what is happening all around the world because I serve my husband faithfully. So, these stories, the women are made to speak these stories in order to create a conditioning of the woman's mind that her husband is God, and everything, including the spiritual emancipation, will come to her if she serves her husband well. She doesn't have to go to forest. She doesn't have to worship any other god. And this kind of psychology is called Stockholm Syndrome. In Stockholm in 1970, the city in Europe, there was a case when some of the people were kidnapped by the kidnapper, the terrorists. And when they were released, the terrorists, the kidnappers, the people who were kidnapped, they fell in love with the terrorists. And after coming out from their, captivity, they started speaking very good about the terrorists. They said they have not killed us. They gave us food. So, there is a psychological conditioning when you fell in love with those same people or that same system which had enslaved you, which had put restriction on your growth because there is no way out. So, that is an internalization of the suppression when you become willing partner in your own separation. Hirsi Ali, she wrote a very nice book, The Cage Virgin, where she says that this subordination is internalized and the women take a strange kind of pride in being subordinate to the male authority. And any revolt against this male authority is perceived as very treacherous, very risky, and they feel more comfortable in the perceived security that is imposed on them by the male hegemony, and that we find the reflection of the Stockholm Syndrome in the narration of the Mahabharata. Now, again, continuing with the Stockholm Syndrome, here also, very often in the narration of the Mahabharata, women are made to speak why they need to be controlled. Interestingly, in the Shanti Parva again, Yudhishthira asked Bhishma that in the relation between man and woman, in the physical relation, who enjoys more? Is it a man or is it a woman? And interestingly, Bhishma, who was a confirmed bachelor throughout his life, says that it is a woman who enjoys it more. That means women are overly sexual. That is being underlined in the pages of the Mahabharata. And this is definitely a patriarchal conspiracy, I think so that their control over the woman is justified. And the Bhishma tells a story of the king Bhagnasava. And this king Bhagnasava, because he was a man, had his own children. Because of the curse of god Indra, he becomes woman for a certain period of time. And then at the end of that period of the curse, the god Indra says, okay, your period of curse is over now. Now you can be a woman once again. But the king says, no, I don't want to become man anymore. I want to remain woman, because I enjoy the physical intercourse more as a woman, as well as I love my children who are born to me as a woman more than I love my children who I have fathered. Then there is a dialogue between the sage Ashtavakra and the Uttar Disha, northern direction. She personifies as a woman, tries to seduce the sage. Sage refuses to be seduced, stays on his vow. And at the end, there is a discourse between these two. So this Uttar Disha, the northern direction, personified as a woman, he tells to sage Ashtavakra that women are like river. If they are not confined to the bank, they will destroy themselves and the whole of the surrounding. In this story, she is again, portrayed as a very infatuated with Ashtavakra. She assumes the different role to seduce Ashtavakra, but Ashtavakra remains stable. So what does the story tries to communicate? That the woman may go astray, she may get infatuated, but the man has to remain under control. Well, now another interesting thing that gives us a perception how the women are pursued is the myth of virginity. These four women in the Mahabharata, Satyavati, Kunti, Draupadi, and Madhvi, they became virgin time and again. In case of Satyavati, most of us are aware of that story, that when she was ferrying the sages on the bank of Yamuna, sage Parashara got into her boat, and he was alone with that maiden, with that young beautiful girl, and he gets infatuated. And he wants to have an intercourse with that girl. But what Satyavati says is that if I allow you to do that, how I will lose my virginity and how I will show my face to my father. So what does that mean? That the virginity of a woman is to be maintained so that the honor of the protector of her sexuality, that is her father before marriage and her husband after her marriage, is to be maintained. So we see that men's honor is being, attached with the sexuality of a woman. Then here, the matter is resolved. Sage says that, okay, don't worry. After the birth of the child, I'll make you virgin once again. And then she agrees. She gets a boon of, getting a fragrant smell as well. In case of Kunti also, Kunti have a premarital relationship with the sun god, and sun god also gives the similar argument. When Kunti says that if I lose my virginity, how I will show my face to my father? Again, the control of sexuality is a responsibility of her father. As if these women don't have their own sense of any morality. It is for the sake of the honor of the men in their life that they are supposed to either remain virgin or give up their body when their father legally marries them off to somebody else. So, these women, they lead a very passive role, especially when it comes to sexuality, and it is all controlled by men. Here again, in case of Kunti also, the sun god promises that your virginity will be restored. In case of Draupadi also, when she is married to 5 brothers, one after another, after consummation of marriage with every brother, she is made virgin by Vyasa. Then there is a very strange case of Madhavi. You know, in Vishwamitra had his pupil as his name was Galava, and he asked to Galava that you have to give me Guru Dakshana, the fees of my teaching, 800 horses who are having white body and 1 ear black. That is a very strange kind of demand. And now this sage Galava, he goes in search of that kind of horses. He goes to King Yayati and asks that kind of horses and says, at least you give me money so that I can purchase those horses. Yayati says, I don't have that much money, neither I have horses, but I have my daughter, Madhavi, and I am giving my daughter to you. So, you know, he takes Madhavi and he gives that Madhavi to one king. Madhavi stays with that king, produces one son, and in return of that service, the sage Galava gets 200 horses. Now, Galava is at a loss. What is to be done? How can I procure next 600 horses? And here in that story, Madhavi speaks only once. Here Madhavi says, I have a boon to become a virgin once again after giving birth to the child. So she becomes virgin again. She is given to another king, and the same thing is repeated. So she is made virgin 3-4 times, and at the end of it, she is being taken to sage Vishwamitra. And Vishwamitra say after 3 kings, Galava says, these are the 600 horses. I don't have 200 horses, but I have this Madhavi. You can take Madhavi. And sage Vishwamitra surprisingly says, why you did not bring her to me earlier? I could have produced 4 children on her. And sage Vishwamitra also produces 1 child. And at the end of it, she becomes virgin again. Her Swayamvara is organized by her father, and that Swayamvara attracts large number of people. So my hypothesis here is that the tradition from which this story has entered in the Mahabharata, the virginity of women as it became important later was not that important. The attitude towards sexuality was a little bit liberal, and that is the reason even after producing 4 children from 4 different men, number of men came as a suitor in the Swayamvara of Madhavi. But interestingly, Madhavi turns her back to the word of the men. She says, you know, I don't want to marry. I'll marry forest. She goes in the forest, does pinnace. You know, so probably this is a very silent protest against the exploitation. And we need to understand the silence as well. I think that is how the Mahabharata is to be read. So this notion of sexual purity, it puts women to the lot of disadvantage. Like let us contemporize it. Take the case of 1947. During the partition, large number of women from both the sides were raped. Hindu and Sikh women were raped by Muslim. Muslim women were raped by Sikh and Hindus. Now Gandhiji took initiative that those women who were forcibly kept by Hindus and Sikh this side of India, and the by the Muslim men, the Hindus girl who were kept forcibly that side in Pakistan, they need to be exchanged. Now you see this notion of sexual purity and the loss of virginity, it put this woman to advantage because Hindus were not willing to accept their daughters and their wives in the house, putting forward an argument that they are now soiled. Similarly, in the medieval period, we find that the Rajputs, when they see that there is no opportunity, there is no chance of winning the war, used to kill their women or make, the women used to commit Zohar, kill themselves before the men go to the war. I don't want to digress too much into this, whether it is the right thing or to do or not. But this notion of sexual purity had put women to the lot of disadvantage. Take the case of Sati. Apart from many other factors, one of the important factors that has given incentive to Sati, that man was always uncomfortable that after my death, my woman will share bed with some other man. And that became one of the important reasons that the patriarchal society forced women to go Sati. In Maratha history, there is an episode of Afzal Khan. He was one of the noble of Bijapuri Adil Shah, and when he was sent against Shivaji, and he had a kind of notion, he had a kind of dream that he is not going to come back. Shivaji is going to kill him. And the legend is that he had more than 40 wives. He called them one by one to his garden and he killed all of them, near where there is Afzal Khan's palace near Bijapur, we find that 40 graves are lined up together, and those graves are similar. And there is a legend. Historians do believe that probably this is not a history, it is a myth, and it is a legend. But we can understand the psychology of man, that how uncomfortable man feels while dealing with the sexuality of women. Let us go to the next. Well, now let us take the case of Draupadi. In the case of marriage of Draupadi, her brother, her father, Pandavas, Kunti, and Vyasa, they all discuss whether she should be married to 5 men, whether it is moral or immoral. But Draupadi had no say. She doesn't say a word. And after her marriage, during the dice game, she is put as a bait. And while putting as a bait, Yudhishthira described her as a very beautiful woman having a long curly hair, who is neither high, neither very tall, neither very short. As if she is like a very precise, very precious possession to entice the opponent to play the game. And when she questions to Sabha whether Yudhishthira has lost himself first, and if he lost himself first, does he had a right to put her as a bait? That question remains unanswered. And in the Sabha Parva, an attempt was made to disrobe her. Now here we see the body of Draupadi is becoming a battleground to ascertain the masculinity. Because when you are disrobing others woman or sexually assaulting her, that is an indicative, that is a very gross insult to the man, that you are not able to protect your woman. And that is how the rape is used as a weapon during the war or during the conflict to demoralize the society. Rape is used as a weapon during the Second World War. When Germany invaded Russia, a large number of Russian women were raped. And when Russia fought back and entered into Germany, they paid back in the same coin. In 71 Bangladesh war, large number of women were raped by Pakistani army. That is one of the weapon. Women's sexuality becomes a battleground to ascertain the masculinity of man. And that we find in case of Ramayana also. In the Ramopakhyana in the Mahabharata, when Ravana was killed and Sita comes to Rama, Rama says, it is a very derogatory, very disrespectful remark against Sita. Rama says that you are like a yajna offering that is licked by a dog, and you have become now impure. Now, as that offering, which is licked by a dog, cannot be offered to the god, I am not going to touch you. I have rescued you. Now you are free to go anywhere. So, Sita's captivity and her rescue becomes a battleground to ascertain the masculinity. Now, as Rama has proved himself to be a more macho than Ravana, Sita is no longer important, and she has to go Agni Pariksha and all that. Now, interestingly, let us go back to Draupadi's wife. Draupadi, that is Pandava's wife. Interestingly, Krishna, who was trusted friend of Draupadi, also offers Draupadi to Karna. Just before the Great War, Krishna has a meeting with Karna, and he tries to tell Karna that you are the eldest of the Pandavas, the firstborn of Kunti. You switch over, leave Duryodhana and come to the Pandavas side. Being the eldest, you will be the king. And another offering that he makes is that you will be also the husband of Draupadi. Whether he takes Draupadi into consideration, whether Draupadi really wanted a 6th husband in her life, is nowhere mentioned. So that is how the woman's sexuality is being treated. Am I overshooting my time, Brahma sir? How much time do I have?
It's okay, sir. You have time.
Yeah, okay. Thank you so much. That is a privilege. Well, okay. So, but not much is left. I think the next part, maybe 25%, maybe 15 minutes, 10 minutes more, I think. Well, okay. Now, another interesting episodes in the Mahabharata where women are treated as a kind of, women's not only sexuality, their power of procreation is also being monopolized by the men. In case of, there is a strange system of Niyoga. Under the Niyoga, women are allowed to have a male child from a man other than her husband. That is given, the description is given in the Mahabharata as well as in the Manusmriti. So if a husband dies and woman doesn't have a son, she can, have a physical relation with other man. The man is, of course, selected by the patriarchal society. There are episodes of Niyoga in the Mahabharata, and one of the very famous episode is the birth of Dhritarashtra and Pandu and Vidura. Vichitravirya, he dies without a male hair, and his wife has to undergo Niyoga. And for that Niyoga, Vyasa is called and Vyasa is sent to Ambika first. Now, whether Ambika was ready for Niyoga is nowhere mentioned. And these women are mentioned as a field of Vichitravirya. So there was a concept of the ownership of the womb. Womb of a woman is owned by her husband, and it is on the instruction of her husband or by the instruction of her elderly relative that the woman has to share her body, with another male and produce a child. And we find that is done in case of Ambika and Ambalika without their consent. And Ambika was so frightened about Vyasa, the smelly sage, that next time when Vyasa was, we know that story, when next time when Vyasa was sent to her, instead of going into her chamber, into his bed chamber, she sends an unknown Dasi. Now, here again, this is an indicative of the uncontrolled sexual exploitation of Dasi. The upper caste women are not subjected to that kind of exploitation. They had their own issues, their own problem. But there is an uncontrolled sexual exploitation of the Dasis and maid, as it is obvious from this episode. The Dasi is well prepared, of course, and she goes, she pleases Vyasa, and Vidura is born. We know all that stuff. So I'm not going to too much into the detail. I'm just deciphering the attitude of the creators of the Mahabharata towards women. Now, Madhavi's case, I already told you, she is made to sacrifice so that Vishwamitra should get his Guru Dakshana. Galava is able to pay Guru Dakshana, and Yayati, her father, is able to keep his word that he is a Kshatriya king, and any Brahmin who is coming in his door should not be let off. So daughter is sacrificed. And later on, when she goes to forest, she undergoes tapascharya, and that the tapascharya, the punya sangraha, the value that she has earned, she gives it to her father. So again, she is made to sacrifice without her consent. And there is a very strange case of Ogavati. Ogavati was a homemaker, a housewife, and her husband, Grihastha, according to the Grihastha ashrama or the dharma of the Grihastha ashrama, the guest, and especially interestingly the Brahmin guest, is to be honored, and all his wishes is to be complied with. So one day what happened is that Ogavati's husband is not in the home, he has gone outside for some work, and the Brahmin guest come. Ogavati serves him, gives him food. Now interestingly, this Brahmin guest, he demands sexual favor from Ogavati. Now Ogavati is in a dilemma. According to the dharma of Grihastha, the wishes of the Brahmin guest is to be fulfilled. But the dharma of a Grihini says that she should remain faithful to her husband. So there are a lot many conflicting moral dilemmas in the Mahabharata, and Ogavati finally agrees. She gives her body to that Brahmin guest, and at the same time her husband comes. When he knocks at the door and says, open the door, the Brahmin says, wait, your wife is pleasuring me. She is doing the dharma of Grihini. That is a very strange, and it will definitely hurt our moral sensibility in today's context. But interestingly, in the Mahabharata, as she fulfilled the dharma of her husband and she both goes to heaven. So what kind of attitude the Mahabharata, the writers of the Mahabharata tries to create, or it is reflected in the Mahabharata, definitely. And Iravati Karve, who wrote on Mahabharata, she says that the Brahmin guests are honored, and one of the service that is provided to the guest is being a sexual favor. We see that Parashara was a sage, and he has relation with the maiden Satyavati, and this is another story. Now let us go to another portrayal of women, that is Savitri and Damayanti. These two men make a lot of sacrifice for husband, like Savitri does a lot of pinnays, goes to Yama's abode, have discussion with him, and then her husband Satyavan is brought back. So here again the narrative is given to the woman that it is a moral responsibility, it is a dharma of a woman to undergo a lot of hardship and pinnays for saving the life of her husband. But we don't see any husband doing pinnays or undergoing a lot of hardship to bring back their own wife. So there is an heroism in suffering for man. It is, again, Stockholm Syndrome, that it is an heroic to suffer for your man. And being a Pativrata seems to bring a kind of occult power. You know, in Damayanti, in the forest, when a man, a hunter, tries to sexually assault her, she just says, and that hunter is burned to the ashes. And the Mahabharata narrates that kind of occult power has come to her because she was a Pativrata. Now, there is another interesting, attitude of despising woman's body. Everybody is born from woman's body, but woman's body is despised. And we find that reflection when Drona is being portrayed as being born Ayoni Sambhava, born without the body of man, or born without the body of a woman. Kripacharya is being portrayed as being born without the body of a woman. Child being born without the body of woman is impossible. No logical explanation can be given. The only hypothesis here is that this woman, the mother of Drona and Kripa, they were being erased from the pages of the Mahabharata in order to hide the transsexual transgression on the part of the sages. These sages, father of Drona, that is Bharadwaja, and father of Kripa, Shardavan, probably they had relation in the original story. My hypothesis is that in the original story, they had relation with this forest-dwelling woman, but in order to protect their honor, they are being erased, and these children are being portrayed as being born without woman. Like, you know, there is a story of Jesus being born without the body of a woman, virginity, not exactly without the body of the woman, but Mother Mary doesn't lose virginity. So, you know, there is a discomfort while dealing with the sexuality of women all across the society, what I feel. Amba life is an indication that if you revolt against the patriarchal society, if you are dared to fall in love and resist the subjugation, your life is going to be very troublesome. Amba had a very troublesome life, but no doubt the narrator of the Mahabharata does had some sympathy for her. Now, you know, this overbearingly patriarchal society, which tries to make woman a very, very submissive Pativrata and being dedicated to her husband, seems to be quite stifling, quite, you know, suppressing. And as a result, we find that in the Indian tradition, there is a myth of Panchakanya. Now, this myth of Panchakanya, we don't find in the Sanskrit text. They are in the oral tradition. And interestingly, all these Panchakanya, like Tara, Mandodari, Draupadi, Kunti, and Ahilya, they had more than one husband, one man in their life. For example, Tara, wife of Vali, marries Sugriva later on. Mandodari, after the death of Ravana, marries Bibhishana. Draupadi had 5 husbands. Kunti, she has produced 4 children from 4 different men. 1 was premarital and 3 was after her marriage by Niyoga. Ahilya was a wife of sage Gautama, and she was seduced by Indra. So what does that indicate? You know, like there is an interesting book of Arti Dan written, who writes on a woman in the Mahabharata, and she says that this narrative about the Panchakanya seems to be kind of silent protest of the woman against such a suffocating narrative of patriarchy. Of course, I leave it there and come to the conclusion now. So in the pages of Mahabharata, there is a lot of heterogeneity. We don't find a very singular portrayal. Though Draupadi is subjugated and she is being put as a bed, but she gives a lot of tongue lashing to her husband Yudhishthira during the forest, when they were in the forest in the Vanaparva. But in spite of this heterogeneity, there is a significant patriarchal influence in the Mahabharata text. But nevertheless, women do respected. Like, for example, Draupadi's insult in the Sabha Parva is repeated time and again in the Mahabharata, and said that this is one of the most heinous and unforgivable crime on the part of the Kaurava. Krishna, he rarely gets angry in the Mahabharata, but when he hears about the Draupadi's episodes, he gets very, very angry, and he says that the earth will rise up and drink the blood of those men who had insulted you. So the woman's honor is definitely given a lot of importance in the pages of the Mahabharata. Kunti is given a lot of respect as a mother. Pandava, we find them always obedient to Kunti, and later on they were almost like obedient to Draupadi as well. Like I mentioned, Satyavati asked Draupadi, how these 5 husbands of yours remain obedient to you, and the mighty Bhima, who is feared by the Kaurava, is always eager to please Draupadi. You know, he takes an oath, Draupadi, no matter whatever happened, but the people who has tormented you and who has insulted you, I will kill all of them and I will drink the blood of Dushasana. So, you know, the woman's honor is definitely respected. Women are respected as a mother. You know, we should not just speak one-sided that this is an overly patriarchal. There are certain narratives which give space to women's respect, women's honor. And interestingly, there is an acknowledgement of women's seductive power. When nothing works, and when the sages are doing pinnes and tapacharya, and Indra becomes uncomfortable, because that tapacharya is supposed to generate a lot of heat, and the sages may acquire a very high position above Indra. Indra becomes very uncomfortable, and when nothing else works, you know, he sends an apsara to seduce the sage, so that sage can be, you know, made unstable and his throne remains safe. So I think I have taken my time. Thank you so much for the patience listening, and I will prefer to stop here. Thank you so much for to Brahma sir and the organizer for inviting me and giving me an opportunity to express my view on the women portrayal of women in the Mahabharata. Yes, Brahma sir, it's over to you.
Yes, thank you so much for your beautiful explanation on the issue or on the topic, and that is portrayal of women in the Mahabharata. I think people have benefited so much from your speech, and I'm asking whether any queries from their side. I think you can see one query from their side. If you can answer to that question.
Yeah.
Only one question came. I think you can see.
Yeah, I can read. There is a question by Gracie Behra. Sir, should the role of women be limited to the epic like Mahabharata, or it should be beyond that? The role of a great woman freedom fighter is still not portrayed depicted perfectly. I do agree with you, Gracie Behra ji. You are very right. You know, the women are too modest to assert themselves, and the men are too conceited to give any credit to women. But you know, things are changing a bit now. There is a women's history, feminine history. These are becoming one of the important dimensions of history writing. Not only about the freedom fighter, but the women's acknowledgement by and large is not being acknowledged. Women's contribution is not being acknowledged for the simple reason is that the history is by and large written by men, but you can change the trend. I'm able to put this question in your mind. I consider it as a success of my lecture that you started thinking on this direction. Sir, then Mosami Datta says, sir, can you please suggest a few books related to this topic so that we can understand it in a more better way? Well, sure. See, this is an interesting book. Can you see this? The Making of Womanhood, Gender Relation in the Mahabharata. This is written by Shalini Shah. In any case, if you feel, you can always contact me. You can take my mail from Brahma sir, and I will be happy to assist you anything that is related to Mahabharata. And there is an interesting book by Aarti Dhand. She teaches in Toronto, Woman as Sages and Woman as Fire. That is the initial title. Title is very big. I'm forgetting the next few words. So this is the Making of Womanhood. This is a very nice book, Shalini Shah. You can note it down, and you can write the name of Aarti Dhand, Woman as Sages and Woman as Fire. I think if you Google it, you will get the link. It's available. You can always contact me. I can share the PDF of Aarti Dhand's book as well. Sir, I feel one minute. This is a remark by Praveen Borkar. Thank you, sir. Sir, I institution house absolute. I'm maybe opinion on it. Not finding the archaeological sites. Gracie, it is very the kind of policies that we had followed after independence for last 60 years had really spoiled the educational scenario. We don't produce at international level. There is an hardly very few institutions or very few scholars are being recognized as doing an exceptional research work. What you are saying is very right. It's not only government funding. Government could have created an infrastructure where the private players are coming forward. You know, Harvard University is a private institution. So when you can have a very good private schools like DPS, Why not to have private universities? But the trends are changing. It will take a lot of time. Ashoka University is a private endeavor in Noida, and they are doing a very excellent job. Maybe next 10, 15 years, they will overtake the very prominent and elite government universities. So, but I think, you are younger generation, probably you are a student, I am not sure. But you can stand on our shoulder and look at a further distance. That is said, you can do much better, and I am hopeful. That is how the progress is. My student, I always expect my student to do better than me. Sir, why Bhishma did not help in Draupadi was, Draupadi was not raped actually. She was disrobed, attempt was made to disrobe. In fact, this is interestingly, just before the Mahabharata war, when Yudhishthira goes and pays his respect to Bhishma, Bhishma in a very sad manner says that, Purusha arthasya dasaha. That means man is slave to the artha, that is wealth. In Indian tradition, we have 4 Purushartha: Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. See, the Purushartha begins with Dharma and ends with Moksha. So this Artha and Kama has to be between Dharma and Moksha. When you give more importance to Artha, the life is spoiled. Bhishma, definitely, this Bhishma's silence in the assembly hall when Draupadi was insulted is one of the one of the act that hurts our moral sensibility, as because Bhishma could have stood up and said that this is not allowed, and he could have stopped it, but he did not, because he was bound by his own sense of dharma, which can be misconceived. This is a very, very, very interesting question. But later on, he is made to pay for it. He dies. And there is a question whether your negative karma, whether your silence become a negative karma. If suppose injustice is done and you sit on the fence and let the injustice happen, that goes into the negativity. That is what one of the message of the Mahabharata. Why Drona and Bhishma, all those are having some lot of good traces, a lot of good character. But as they stood on the side of adharma, they are punished. And you see how they are killed. They are killed by adharma. So, one of the message of the Mahabharata is that whatever you do, it comes back to you. But, interestingly, Mahabharata is a very complex text. The more you read it, the more question will come to your mind. But that is how the human life is. I sincerely believe that human mind, or at least my mind, is not developed to such an extent where I can understand the complexities of human life. The journey is going on, and Mahabharata is the author of the Mahabharata is very humble in that way. Vyasa, at the end of the Mahabharata, says that, raising my hand to the sky, I cry aloud, follow dharma. If you follow dharma, the artha, kama, and moksha will come to you, but nobody listens to me. So interestingly, the life and the society that is depicted in the Mahabharata, there is a very clear indication that there is a downfall of adharma. In the beginning of the Mahabharata, in the Adi Parva, earth in the form of a woman goes to Brahma, God Brahma, and says that I am oppressed because there is a lot of adharma on the earth. And the Brahma promises that, don't worry, the God will incarnate and they will reduce our burden. There will be adharma will be vanished. So definitely what you are saying, Bhishma could not intervene because there was a prevailing adharma, and that is the reason that at the end of the war, large number of people were killed. Now you have to make choice whether, when the adharma is being perpetuated, when there is a corruption, when somebody spoils the environment, whether you should just sit quiet. That will be an adharma. I think that is how I read Mahabharata. Mahabharata is Lavanya is asking questions.
Okay, sir. Sir, Principal sir, do you have anything to say?
Yeah, there are a couple of more questions, but if the time is up,
okay. I think Principal sir, do you have anything to say?
No.
Okay. Time is no more actually. We'll discuss later on, sir, and I think everyone is very much benefited with the deliberation.
Yeah.
And vote of thanks will be given by Dr. Kusum Brahma, lecture coordinator from Bijni College. Now I request her to give the vote of thanks.
Yeah, please.
Sir,
Am I audible?
Yeah, you are. Yeah.
Good evening, everyone, to the one and to all present here. Honorable invited speaker, Dr. Ravi Khangai, respected principal, Dr. Surijat Bhuya, Lakhimpur Girls College, respected Dr. Birhaskiri Basumutari, principal, Bizni College, Bizni, and all the participants. It is such an opportunity for me to get the opportunity to thank you all dignitaries. I, Kusum Brahma, on behalf of the webinar organizing committee, would like to thank all the esteemed participants without whom our program would not have been successful. I would like to extend my sincere gratitude to Dr. Birhaskiri Basumutari, Principal, Bizni College, Bizni, and Dr. Surajit Bhuya, Principal, Lakhimpur Girls College, for their presence, encouragement, and immense support to make this webinar a great success. I would like to extend a very hearty thanks to our honorable invited guest, Dr. Ravi Khangai, for accepting our invitation despite his busy schedule and sharing his knowledge and ideas today. Thank you, sir, for your thought-provoking and insightful speech. I extend my gratitude to Dr. Kalidas Brahma, HOD, Political Science of Lakhimpur Girls College, and Mrs. Aparna Misra, HOD, Education of Bizni College, for collaborating and organizing the webinar even amidst a hectic schedule. I wish to express my gratitude to Dr. Subhanjali Prasad Das for giving an excellent coverage of the event. I must mention my deep sense of appreciation to Babisa Terang and Dr. Demalu Basumutari for technical support. I must thank each and every one of organizing team for working hard for the past few days to make this webinar successful. Last but not the least, I will extend my gratitude for the people who helped us directly and indirectly from the beginning. Thank you all once again. It is over to you, Dr. Brahma.
Okay, thank you, Thomas. Kusum Brahma, Dr. Kusum Brahma, for a lot of things. With this, I thank everyone again and conclude this webinar. Thank you, Thomas, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.